Welcome back, movie lovers. I'm Josh.
And I am Chris.
And with our powers combined, we are Garner Brothers Movie Lovers. Hit that like button and we'll get started. Today we're talking about No Time to Die. In it, James Bond is retired and living with his true love. Somewhere in South America?
I don't think so. I don't remember where they were.
I don't know.
No. They were in, Europe somewhere, I think.
Cool, in Europe. I promise I saw this movie. But as James Bond love interests do, she betrays him. Spectre tries to blow him up at the gravesite of the last true love he retired with that betrayed him. Now it's personal and James Bond must come out of retirement one last time again.
This film was directed by Kari Joji Fukunaga. It was written by a bunch of people, actually.
The story was only by 3, but there was some screenplay and some character.
Yeah, because this movie went through a lot of development. There was an early script, and then Danny Boyle was going to direct, and then creative differences reared their ugly head, and so that all got... Anyway, so Neil Purvis, Robert Wade, and the director himself helped write, and Phoebe Waller-Bridge came in to polish the script as well at Daniel Craig's suggestion. The film stars Daniel Craig, of course, and Léa Seydoux, and Rami Malek is the bad guy, Lucifer Safin. His name just sounds so much like Lucifer Satan to me. Lashana Lynch is in it, Ralph Fiennes, of course, Ben Wishaw's back as Q, Naomi Harris, Jeffrey Wright, Christopher Waltz is back as Blofeld. Billy Magnuson is also in it, playing the Book of Mormon.
And the soundtrack
is by Hans Zimmer, and he does a pretty dang good job.
Yeah,
he channels John Barry really well. At points, I think even just reusing straight themes from previous Bond films, and it sounds pretty much like you'd expect Hans Zimmer doing a Bond film. The action music is very Hans Zimmer. The Cuba action music, though, actually is super fun. And that finale track...
The finale, I noticed the finale.
...is amazing.
Beautiful.
It is definitely... Definitely the most dramatic James Bond music you will ever hear, or at least that you've ever heard so far. Yeah, it's very emotional.
Let's review it. Spoiler free to begin with. I think we're done doing separate videos for spoilers.
Yeah. We'll talk about it spoiler free for now. We'll rate it, tell you what we think, and then after that we'll get into some spoilery stuff. Some very spoilery stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, he's going into the MCU.
That's the big surprise. James Bond is now in the MCU.
This is a solid send-off for Daniel Craig.
For sure, yeah.
It was a
very satisfying conclusion to his story arc.
Definitely worth seeing in theaters. I would
agree.
Recommend it.
Yeah.
And I would say this feels more like a James Bond movie than any Daniel Craig James Bond movies to this point.
Why do you think that?
Casino Royale, he's playing cards really for the majority of that movie. Skyfall, it ends in a little tiny cabin and
Well, it's kind of a big cabin.
Right, well, I just, in comparison to every other Bond movie prior to Daniel Craig that ends in the evil lair of the bad guy, I just feel like they've been intentionally trying to subvert some of those Bond tropes with these movies, and I think in this one, they just kind of embraced them. And
he's also quippier in this movie than he has been. A lot of cheesy dad jokes.
I think you got the point.
that James Bond is pretty famous for, that Daniel Craig hasn't indulged in quite so much, but man, so many puns about that one-eyed villain henchman.
yeah, some one-liners after killing him, that...
Yeah.
In this one, they kind of made it so he was saying it to someone on an earpiece, so it wasn't like he wasn't just saying it to himself like Pierce Brosnan was.
fingerprint anything these days.
Still, afterwards I was like,
That's
okay.
a dad joke. They weren't called dad jokes back then. They were just those zingers that Bond would always throw out after he killed somebody, but they were really dad jokes is what they've always been, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
But there is more of that. In a way, I thought, though, that this movie felt less like a Bond film.
Really? Interesting. Why do you say that?
Because I think this movie had a lot more emotional gravitas than a regular Bond film. Like, a lot of Bond films are kind of turn your brain off, fun, action, popcorn spectacles. This one had that, but I felt like the stakes were way higher, way more personal. Like, the whole story just felt a lot more grown up to me than a lot of regular James Bond films.
Wouldn't you agree that that's kind of how probably most of the Daniel Craig ones are?
Yeah,
though?
Daniel Craig's Bond films have all been grittier, but this one felt even more mature to me, story-wise, than his previous
And in the
ones.
emotionality of it, I mean, like, I don't know if there's anything more emotional than the scenes where what's-her-name dies in the, like, sinking building and
Vesper?
stuff.
Yeah, that was pretty heavy. I mean, a lot of Daniel Craig's Bond films have been heavier than previous Bond films, but this one to me was the heaviest.
And I also felt like just the like sets that they were in for each thing, it reminded me of playing the old GoldenEye game. You're like in the jungle at one point. You're in the science laboratory. You're in the lair.
You're on the bad guy's island.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Thing.
I loved it. I loved that. His watch was a gadget again. It's kind of hard to do gadgets now because everything an old Bond movie would have as a gadget is now just part of
It's
a
a regular
smartphone.
That's true.
So,
not exploding pens. We don't have exploding pens.
but it was fun to see a little EMP watch. That was cool. It has a lot of things that you would want to see in a Bond movie, and it also has a lot of things that you think are overdone in a Bond movie. And I've mentioned some of those things, like the girlfriend who betrays him, and coming out of retirement again, and being retired at the beginning of the movie. For the most part, those things didn't really bother me while I was watching it.
No, they were well
I didn't
done.
really think about it until...
I thought the action scenes were great. I think all of the Daniel Craig films have had good action scenes for the most part. There's some shaky cam stuff in Quantum of Solace I did not appreciate. But other than that, and the stunts are amazing. That motorcycle jump is so cool. It all just looks amazing. Looks fantastic. The stunts are just incredible as they have been in Bond films. There's not a ton of reliance on CG or green screen since the Brosnan era. We're not kite surfing on tidal waves here, or whatever that was.
There was some genuine, unexpected twists throughout the movie that were interesting. Is there anything else non-spoiler you want to mention?
I thought I didn't mention Ana de Armas was in this film.
Yeah.
Who also co-starred with him in Knives Out, which we have 2 reviews of that you should check out because those are fun. But Ana de Armas was awesome. She plays a CIA agent in Cuba, and she is super fun.
It's really fun to see him interacting with the younger agents now that he's the
this
old guy.
Grizzly, old, seasoned veteran.
And at the beginning of all of his introductions to these new people, you can tell he doesn't have much respect for them. And some of them don't have any respect for him either. Some
Not
of them
at
just
first.
are like gawking over him.
That's true.
But by the end, there's this mutual respect, and it was just kind of a fun thing that they slid in there.
The thing that I enjoyed most about Ana de Armas was, like, seeing the previews with her in it. She looked like she was going to be another kick-butt agent, too cool for school, like everybody in the Daniel Craig, everyone in all of the James Bond films is, right? But she wasn't too cool. She was this, like, eager beaver agent that was just so excited to be on her first mission and, like, really nervous about it at the same time.
Weeks.
Yeah, it was really funny.
But then at the same
So I
time,
liked that.
while she wasn't, there
was
was
still
no
awesome.
arrogance. She was amazing.
Yeah, she was still awesome.
When push came to shove,
Yeah.
she was really kicking some major butt.
It was too bad she was only in it for a little while.
So let's rate it. I don't think this is a big reveal or anything. I put it at good.
I'm going to call this movie great. It may be my favorite Bond film.
Good, great, fantastic
Ever.
fireworks?
Yeah. I really, really like this film. Like, Skyfall has been my favorite Bond film since that came out. This one is on that level for me, maybe even a little bit better. I thought they were very brave to do some of the things they did in this movie. I thought that the stakes were higher and more personal than they've ever been.
I do
thought
agree
it was
about the stakes.
Very intense. I have problems with it. I thought the villain could be more fleshed out, and his whole organization was a little ridiculous. So, it's not a perfect film.
Another thing that kind of seems to happen in Bond movies, I think, and just espionage movies in general, is like, oh, we eliminated the bad guys, but there's a new
huge organization of bad guys.
They've been here all along, watching us.
Yeah, so that trope is getting a little tiresome. But I'm going to give it a pass. This movie was great. I really, really liked it.
Yeah. Rotten Tomatoes score of 84, audience score of 88. And I wanted to ask you what order you would rate
the Daniel Craig films.
Uh-huh.
So, number 1 and 2 are No Time to Die and Skyfall for me. Those two are the best. Casino Royale is very close. I like Casino Royale a lot. Then Spectre, which I think is better than some people think it is, even though it does have some problems. And then Quantum of Solace.
Okay, so I have my list here, but I also renamed the titles of all of them. So I want you to see if you can guess what movie it is by my renamed title.
Okay.
My number 1 is James Bond Plays Texas Hold'em.
Okay, that's Casino Royale.
The one that isn't a Bourne movie.
The one that isn't a Bourne movie? None of these are Bourne movies.
So this is based off of my idea that this movie, No Time to Die, is the most Bond movie that Daniel Craig has made.
The rest are Bourne films. Okay, I got you.
But that's not entirely true. We had the last Pierce Brosnan one, and then freaking Bourne came out, and they were like, we got to reboot.
Yeah,
we can't.
James Bond has to stop being a wimp.
And then the first opening scene is him doing that like parkour chase through the, and you're like, oh yeah, like, and you could tell they're kind of the fighting and stuff. They're trying to of reflect that Bond feel, but
for sure,
I mean Bourne feel. But anyway, so that's why I put this one as the one that isn't a Bourne movie.
Okay,
and then 3, the one that is The Dark Knight.
Okay. Is that Skyfall?
Yeah, that's Skyfall.
Why is Skyfall The Dark Knight?
The director talks all about how influenced he was by The Dark Knight when he made Skyfall. And the bad guy is basically the Joker, intentionally getting caught as part of his big scheme and all sorts of things that reflect The Dark Knight.
That's true.
The one that you don't remember.
Oh, okay. Quantum of Solace?
Spectre.
Oh, I remember Spectre, okay. I think that one's more like a Bond film than you might remember.
The only thing I can remember about Spectre is that there's like skeletons at the beginning.
Skeletons?
They're at a like Dia de los Muertos party.
Oh, yeah.
There's like skeletons.
No, I love that.
The tracking shot was amazing. That's really the only part I remember.
Yeah, I had to rewatch that before I went and saw this one. And yeah, because the pre-credit scene was the one I remembered the most.
And then the last one is the bad guy steals water.
Okay, there's Quantum. So go see the movie. It's good.
Yeah, and let us know what you thought. When you come back to see the spoileriness.
Yeah.
Let us know what you thought.
If you haven't seen the movie yet, and you haven't been spoiled on this movie yet,
freaking
stop watching.
Turn it off
because you deserve to see the end of this movie without being spoiled. It's a really great finale. So don't watch the rest of this if you haven't seen the movie yet.
Hello everyone, this is me, Josh. Sorry to interrupt this video, but I just wanted to say I'm sorry this video is so freaking long. And because it's so long, I've become just exhausted with the editing process. So for the spoiler section, there will be very little editing. And yeah, it's been too long since we saw this and made the review, and this movie's been out. So this just needs to get up on the internet, and I'm feeling lazy, so sorry, but that's what I'm doing.
as far as spoilers go, I'll just say I know every bad guy in Bond franchises has an organization, but they had an organization from the last film. Spectre was still around. They caught Blofeld at the end of that movie, but his organization was still around. So to introduce a brand new organization that somehow grew out of a vengeful orphan son of a poison maker, like somehow he grows this criminal organization out of nothing, and somehow finds out the DNA of all the agents of Spectre, the most secret evil organization on the planet. Like, how did he do that? You already had Spectre, so why not just make him an agent of Spectre? Why not make him kind of the new de facto leader or whatever? Like, it seemed silly to me to... That's a nitpicky problem. But he was, I will say, he was creepy. He posed a genuine threat, I thought, to these characters that was intense and scary.
He was very intimidating, but in a very cowardly way. It was like every time that he had power, it was just because he was taking advantage of like children.
Yeah.
He was
yeah.
And having my own children now, when bad guys do that in movies, gosh, it really hits me hard.
Yeah. The introduction of the child in this movie, that changed everything. Like, everything prior to that in the movie was, okay, here we go. And then suddenly there's a little girl, a 5-year-old little girl in the movie. And even before, I mean, you find out at the end, of course, that this is Bond's daughter, yeah? So, but even before that's confirmed, there's a little girl in the movie. And I thought they did an amazing job. So the whole chase through the misty woods, incredible scene.
Awesome.
Great scene. But the fact that there's a little girl in the back seat, just like, it takes the tension and just ratchets it all the way up. Like,
any car chase scene you've seen in a spy movie or whatever, it's not
as intense as one with a 5-year-old girl in the back seat.
It's crazy. It is crazy.
I think that the director and the actors did an amazing job making you feel that. Like, Bond keeps checking back and looking at her. The camera keeps panning back, and it doesn't let you forget she's there. Like, it makes it really present. I felt like it was more intense, than any car chase scene I've seen in a Bond film. And it's not just the car chase; it's after he leaves them in the shack afterward, and it's the rest of the movie because this little girl's in danger for the rest of the movie, and
she gets taken away. He
takes her away from her mom, and it's like, oh my gosh! So that was another reason why I love this movie. Like, it was so intense. The stakes were just. Because of the little girl.
Lets her run away, you're like, please find them.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about that super weapon?
Okay. That's another problem I have with this movie. I mean, so you have a DNA targeting bioweapon that's not really a bioweapon, it's actually nanotechnology. Nanotechnology is always a little cheaty to me, like, oh, it's nanobots, that's basically code for magic. You can introduce magic into a real world film if you use nanobots. And it also was silly to me that once you get the nanobots on you, you can never get rid of them. If only I had a device strapped to my wrist that could short circuit electronic devices or something, because nanobots are robots, right? I mean, they're electronic.
That's true.
Like, why can't he just be like, boom, okay,
he's
no
like,
more...
How do I get rid of them? And he's like, you can't. You can never get rid of them.
I'm not a fan of nanobots. It was an interesting idea, and it is, like, potentially, like, super world threatening, right? Because they never go away, and so then the bad guys just have to decide, okay, this is the next group of people who are going to die, and they will all eventually die, and so...
Which was that aspect of the super weapon was very interesting. The nanobot aspect of it is kind of lame. But the very first time you're introduced to it during the birthday scene, the Spectre birthday scene, was really cool.
Kind of intense.
That scene, that was one of those twists that I talked about that I was not expecting at all. When that birthday scene happens and people just start kind of framing Bond, I was like, that's kind of weird. It's like everyone knows he's there. And
then they do.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I thought that the setup and payoff for that moment was done really well. Because you could see that there was something funny going on with that scientist, but you didn't know what he was doing.
Right.
And when it all happened, they didn't have to explain it to you.
You got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did end up explaining it afterwards, but they didn't have to.
Yeah, that was good. It's interesting if you think about those thumb drives. This was another issue that might be a problem for me, or it might be kind of brilliant. I can't decide. But he has this thumb drive that he swallows earlier in the film, right? He's coded something to it. Later on, he puts that in the place of the thumb drive that he's given by the bad guys. And that is what makes it so that all the Spectre agents die instead of James Bond. So at that point, you're thinking that this other thumb drive must have had Bond's DNA on it, and that was supposed to kill him, right? But then that thumb drive gets opened up by Q later in the movie, and you find out it's got tons of people on it. So that birthday wasn't just killing James Bond. That was the kickoff for this huge global attack that was eventually going to get tons of people, including probably all the major intelligence agencies and maybe government leaders and who knows who else. That was supposed to release all of that at that moment, right? Because then anyone who was at that party who then comes in contact with anyone else who comes in contact with those people down the line, right? I mean, that was supposed to be the moment that was kicking off Spectre's grand endgame kind of thing. And instead it was totally thwarted by the silly scientist guy who I liked. He was kind of funny.
He was kind of funny.
But it was a little problematic when Q opens it up and this little thumb drive isn't just James Bond's DNA. It's exactly the plot point they need to get to the next place they go. And so, that sort of convenience was a little bit like a Bond film.
Sure, but the girlfriend doesn't actually betray him. She's framed by Spectre.
Right.
And I kind of liked seeing that, taking a trope of James Bond and, doing a 180 on it, I guess.
See, and I didn't buy that she betrayed him in the first place. Like, that just didn't... Like, when he sends her off on the train at the very beginning, I just thought, what's he doing? Like, why does he think she betrayed him?
But it makes sense that he thought that, because they always do.
That was more clear to me by the end of the movie. That I understood a little bit more about why he did that by the end. But in the moment it was happening, I just thought, she's clearly a good guy. Like,
yeah, in the moment, it made me wonder, because I didn't think she was clearly a good guy, but I thought, I don't think she's behind all of that. I don't think she is, but also...
She did send him right to the place where he almost got blown up.
It wouldn't surprise me if at the end of the movie, when Bond finally decides that she didn't betray him, all of a sudden her whole demeanor changes and she, takes off her jacket and, pulls her hair out and then she's the bad guy. That would be something that would happen in a Bond movie. Yeah. But it did seem at the beginning like, I don't know if she was really behind that. And I think it was supposed to be like that. Let's talk the big one.
Yeah. They killed James Bond.
First time in 25 film franchise history.
Yeah, so I gotta give them kudos for that, for killing James Bond. I mean, I said that they should do this a year and a half ago when it was Daniel Craig's last Bond film and we knew he wasn't, totally in love with being James Bond at that point. And I just that they, knowing this is going to be his last, they ought to kill him and they ought to introduce his replacement in this film. I don't think they did that, but we can talk about that later.
We can talk about that now. There's not much more to say about that.
Well, I will just say that scene worked great for me.
It was
Bond's death was
awesome,
glorious. Yeah. It was so perfect, emotionally cathartic. Like that whole scene just worked really well, and Zimmer's music carried it. Zimmer's music was incredible.
This is the moment. This is the music moment where everything came together, and you just have this out of body experience in the theater, and you're like,
it was awesome. And by far the most emotional moment I've ever seen in a James Bond film. Like, I have never been emotionally moved by a Bond film before, but I was this time. It was really good. The send-off, Craig's acting, his final minutes as James Bond, man, he nailed it.
Yeah.
It was great. I thought it was an amazing way to end it. I've seen so many people complaining about how they sacrificed James Bond on the altar of Me Too. I didn't feel that way at all.
No.
At all. I thought this was an amazing send-off for, in my opinion, the best Bond. So, I loved it.
It was really great. And I wonder if I would feel differently about the movie had I not had a pounding migraine that progressively got worse
until
the finale of the movie. But But I did still love it, and it's still number 2 on my list for now. But maybe in the future, when I go back and watch it, I'll think that I like it even better. So let's talk the future of the franchise.
What do you think they should do?
I don't know. They've clearly introduced a new 007, technically.
Yeah, they have a female 007 now. They can check that off their list.
I think there's basically 2 things they can do at this point. They can continue the franchise that has been with Daniel Craig, with probably this new 007, and the characters that they currently have, or just reboot the whole thing. I don't know if I want to see James Bond movies within the Daniel Craig James Bond universe that don't have Daniel Craig in them. I guess what I want them to do is reboot it, I guess, but I don't know. I don't know how I would, because it would be interesting if they did continue the franchise with this new person, and maybe they could do it in a way that it didn't feel like it was within, because they carried over M from the Pierce Brosnan James Bond movies.
They did.
But it didn't feel like it was a Pierce Brosnan like James Bond movie.
No, it didn't.
So they could do that.
And it did feel, it was a reboot. I mean, Casino Royale was a reboot because he's a brand new 00 agent.
Right. But I mean, I think they could probably continue this, I guess, James Bond universe in a way that doesn't feel like a James Bond Daniel Craig movie without Daniel Craig. And that would be interesting to see, but
I hope they do. I like the world they've created. I feel like the continuity in the Daniel Craig Bond films is special in the Bond universe.
Oh, absolutely.
Like all the other Bond films really feel episodic. Some of them call back to some things that happened in previous films. Obviously, Blofeld is a recurring character in the older Bond films. But I don't feel like any of those movies have the same kind of through line that the Daniel Craig films have had. These have been really true sequels to one another. There was a lot in this movie that paid off things that were set up in other movies. Like Jeffrey Wright's character's death, Felix Leiter, his death, that means a lot more because, I mean, if you've seen the first 2 Daniel Craig Bond films, right? You understand how he feels about Vesper and everything if you're familiar with previous Bond films from the Daniel Craig films. And so I really like that, and I hope they continue it. I want Bond to be a continuation now. I want James Bond to become a code name. It was his real name, but I want it to become a code name. Some people have talked that way about some of the other Bond films. I think it's pretty solidly established that they were all playing the same guy, just different people, and nobody ever brought it up. Until Daniel Craig, because they really did a hard reboot with Daniel Craig, because he's a brand new 00.
Well, apparently at the end of the movie, there's no post-credit scene.
But it does say
James Bond will return. But they can't have Lashana Lynch be named James Bond. I mean, they could, but wouldn't that just be dumb?
She could change her name, because she does have a name in this movie. Her name's Nomi, I guess.
Yeah.
But, so she could, adopt the name James Bond as an alias out of respect or as an honor to Daniel Craig's character, and then she could be James Bond from that point. They could do that. I think if they are going to continue in the same universe that they've had, then the next James Bond, I mean, it will be James Bond according to that line in the credits, right? So whoever it is, it's going to have to be a code name from now on. But always, just 007 is now going to be called James Bond in honor of, the original or whatever. So they could do that. I thought Daniel Craig made an interesting point about a woman playing James Bond. He said he'd rather have a woman play a spy that's just as good as James Bond, that is a woman's role, so that she doesn't have to inherit something that a man set up, but she gets to be a super cool spy that's on the level as James Bond. And maybe they'll go that way with Lashana Lynch's character.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment as well. I feel like it's been happening a lot with movies where they take a character that, like the Loki and some other things, but
like a female reboot of a movie that used to be men.
Yeah, and it's not as cool as when a woman is just her own thing that is built up, and so
like Black Widow.
Yes, like Black Widow.
Yeah,
Black Widow's super cool, and it would be less cool if it was just an iconic role from a male person, that was inherited from a female person. It's more empowering for a woman to do it on her own than to be inheriting it from a man.
I agree. I think what would be really cool. Okay, so did you hear that Amazon is like sort of buying out MGM, or like they now have like a major financial interest in all the MGM properties. So they also have a streaming service, naturally. I think it would be awesome to see some James Bond spin-off streaming TV series starring Lashana Lynch, starring Ana de Armas. I would love to see those characters kind of doing their own spin-off things and their own missions. Bring James Bond back, like they said. Get James Bond back again, a new guy to play James Bond, or a new guy to like take up the moniker of James Bond at least, and play that character in the future. But I'd love to see that, actually. I think it would be really cool.
I thought it would be cool for them to do like a story about M or something, like a prequel about M.
Oh, yeah.
Because they have characters, female characters in these movies already that you could do something with. But and I think it would be cool too to take James Bond back to like the 60s or something and just revisit James Bond back when it was that silliness. But
so who do you like for James Bond? If you had to pick an actor to play James Bond right now,
I saw an image somebody had put together of Henry Cavill as James Bond, and I was digging that.
Yeah, he would nail it. Idris Elba's been talked about for a long time as playing James Bond. I think it would be really cool to have a black man play James Bond, and Idris Elba is super cool, but he's getting old.
He's already the old guy, so you can't really reboot it.
I mean, he could play James Bond for a couple films, but I don't know how long he would want to go.
You can't do 5-film franchise like you did with Daniel Craig.
I think he might already be older than Daniel Craig is.
Maybe.
I've heard Tom Hiddleston talked about as being a candidate for James Bond.
Not good.
I think he could do it. But my pick might actually be Dan Stevens. Yeah,
he's pretty skinny.
He doesn't have to be. He's played some pretty kick-butt characters in some movies, so I think he could do it for sure. But Cavill's already enormous and very Bond-looking. In fact, maybe more Bond-looking than anyone who's ever played Bond. That guy's got the squarest jaw in the history of Jaws.
Needless to say, I think we're excited to see what they do with the future of the franchise.
I am excited to see what they do.
Okay. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like. Because you have to. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see more of our content. Click the bell if you want to be notified every time we post something.
And in case we don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
And did you know that in Skyfall, you know that old guy who's just like at the shack?
The groundskeeper guy.
Did you know that was supposed to be Sean Connery?
No.
Yeah. But he turned it down.
Oh, I wish he hadn't.
Right?
But he hasn't done a movie in so long.
Nah, he decided to stop after being in a league of extraordinarily stupid people.